Hi, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are doing the 12.2 notes, which is on volume and surface area of prisms. Today we are learning about modeling with geometry, and so we will be applying geometric concepts. So I'm just reading here what our standard is. We are applying geometric concepts in modeling situations, and so that might mean designing an object or a structure that satisfies physical constraints or minimizing cost, or working with typographic grid systems based on ratios. And so our goals for today are to be able to find the surface area and the volume of a prism. And specifically, we're going to be talking about right prisms or rectangular prisms. And so this is what we're going to be talking about today. But we do have our formula sheet here, which has some volume and surface areas of other types of shapes. But today we're just talking about rectangular prisms. And then we're going to use that surface area and volume to solve design problems. And so we have our formulas. We have that the surface area of a rectangular prism is 2 times length times height plus length times width times height. And then the volume is the base area times the height. And because we're talking about rectangular prisms, our base area is a rectangle. And so if our base area is a rectangle, the way that we find the area of a rectangle is we do length times width. So it's going to end up being length times width and then times height. So that's how you find the volume of a rectangular prism. And so let's get right into some of our examples. And so our first example I will do for you. And so you can just follow along and you should be taking notes as I go through this example. It says find the volume and surface area of each right prism, round to the nearest tenth if necessary. And so these numbers, 8 is referring to this length. So 8 centimeters is our length. And then 6 is that would be our width. And 6 centimeters we'll label as our width. And then 12 centimeters, I'll write that one in orange, that would be our height, so 12 centimeters. And what's nice here is because for finding the volume is length times width times height. Because I'm just multiplying those numbers together, it doesn't really matter if 8 is my length or my width or my height. Those numbers would all be interchangeable there, just based on how we have the box standing on our floor. And so let's use our colors. So 8 is our length. And then our width, that one was in pink, is 6. And our height, that one was in orange, that was 12. And so if I want to find the volume, I just multiply 8 times 6 times 12. So I'm going to take out my calculator, and I'm going to type into my calculator 8 times 6 times 12. So for example 1, the volume would be 576. And then because we're talking about centimeters and we are in volume, it would be centimeters cubed. That is a 3-dimensional unit. And so the volume is 576 centimeters cubed. And I'm going to put a box around that because that's the answer to the first part of this question. The second part of this question is what is the surface area? So if I don't have this formula memorized, I could go back up in my formulas and I could find the surface area formula, which is 2, and then in parentheses, length times width. So let's write this down here. So we've got, let me make this bigger. We've got 2. And then we had length times width plus, let me zoom out, length times width, length times height, and width times height. So those could go in any order because it's addition. And so there I go. So now I'm just going to plug these numbers in. So wherever I have an L, I'll write 8. And then wherever I have a W, I'll write 6. And then wherever I have height, I'll write 12. Okay, and then I just need to write a plus sign there, a plus sign there, put parentheses around it, and write the little 2. So that would be my surface area equation. So now let's take out our calculator again. And I'm just going to type into my calculator 2 and then in parentheses 8 times 6 plus 6 times 12 plus 8 times 12. Oops, I ran out of room there. And let's double check what we wrote, make sure that that matches what we have here. So I'll do a split screen. And I'm just going to make sure I have 2, and then in parentheses 8 times 6 plus 6 times 12 plus 8 times 12, and then close the parentheses. So that means that my surface area would be 432. Now, anytime we have area, lateral area, surface area, base area, area is always units squared. So our units here are centimeters, that's two-dimensional. And so unit squares means centimeters squared or centimeters raised to the second power. And so I would say the surface area is 432 centimeters squared, and I'm going to put a box around it because that is my final answer. Okay, now we're going to try the next example together. This is a we do example. And so what I'm going to have you do is just pause this video or just take a second to find the volume and surface area of this problem. And so you can refer back to the last problem that we did if you need to look at that. And I'm just going to give you a second now to try it. And then in just a second, I'll go over how we do this problem. Okay, so hopefully you had time or you paused this video and you tried this example. Now this example is kind of interesting because what we have is a length, which is, here, let me keep my colors a little bit. So this is my 8 centimeters here is my width. And then I was using orange for my height. 8 centimeters is also my height. And then I was using the color black for my length, and you can see it's labeled here as 8 centimeters. It would also be labeled here as 8 centimeters. But what you're seeing is that this is a special type of rectangular prism. It's called a cube, where all of the side lengths are exactly the same. And so when we do an example like this, it doesn't really change anything other than that when we do volume, which is length times width times height, we're just doing 8 times 8 times 8. And then for the surface area, when we have 2 and then length times width plus width times height plus length times height, these are all going to be 8 times 8. So 8 times 8 plus 8 times 8 plus 8 times 8. So I didn't use my colors here. I could have gone in and changed some of these to orange and some of them to pink. And you know what? Here, I can do that. So let's highlight all of the widths in pink. So this was a width and this was a width. And then I'll highlight in orange all of my heights. So there's the height and there's the height. And there's the height. And then I could also highlight in black. What I was using was the length. So there's the length, and there's the length, and there's the length. Okay, so hopefully you tried this example already. Let me take out my calculator to type, these numbers in. And so the volume would be 8 times 8 times 8. 512 centimeters cube, and that is my volume. You could write that in a complete sentence. I'm just going to put a box around that for now. And then this would be 2, and then 8 times 8 plus 8 times 8 plus 8 times 8. And I get 384 centimeters squared because it's an area. And that's my answer to that problem. All right, now we have our last example. This is a you do example. So I want you to try this example. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write down the answer. Okay, so hopefully you got that answer as well. And now we get on to what our homework is. And so our homework for today is a project. And so I have assigned you into groups. So find your name. Here, let me highlight these in yellow. And so you need to find your name. You might be in one of these groups. You might be in one of these partnerships. And you might be in one of these partnerships. So find your name in there somewhere. And then you want to follow along with me. You want to read the directions. And the directions pretty much start out the same. Number one, you're finding a box of food. So go into your kitchen and you want to find a box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch or a box of graham crackers, a box of anything. Really, it can be any box. It doesn't have to be a box of food. But we're using boxes of food because you might have a part of your project, depending on which group you're in, where you need to compare the label, which tells you how much food is actually in that box. So every single group starts with direction 1, which is find the box of food, and direction 2, which is to measure the height and width and length of that box. So you need to take out a ruler or measuring tape, or you could even print out a ruler if you just Google ruler. And you need to measure your length and your height and your width, and make sure that you write those down, because step 3 in all of the directions say calculate the volume and the surface area. And it's very important that when you do these calculations that you're showing all of your work, because whether you're making me a video to present your findings or writing me a paper or just submitting a picture of your work, I need to see that your work is correct. And so that's how you're going to get graded, and I'll talk about that a little more in a second. And so step 4 is to calculate whatever it is that you need to calculate. So the directions are a little bit different for each group, and then direction 5 says how you're going to present your findings. And so you're either calculating the ratio of volume to surface area, or you're converting your volume into cups or fluid ounces, or you're giving me an explanation of your work. And then if you're in group 1, you are writing a 1-paragraph essay about your findings. Each student is going to write their own essay. In group 5, you are submitting a picture of your work. And then that was group B. And then group C, you are making a video where you explain to me all of your steps. And so this is how your paper or your work or your video will be graded. Number 1, I need to be able to read and follow your work. So your work, just that I can see it, that I can read it, that I can follow it, is worth 3 points. Then your explanation, whether you're talking or whether it's a written explanation, I need to be able to follow your reasoning and the steps that you took. Your work is worth 10 points. That's half of your grade. So 10 points goes right to your work. And then that you submitted your assignment on time and that you worked well with your partner. Working well with your partner means if you need help, you ask your partner and your partner asks you. You can, of course, come to me for help as well, but first you need to start with your partner and try to help your partner. And then you are also responsible for what your partner submits. So you need to check their work and they need to check your work. Here are some additional resources. So these are for practice if you want to play a volume or surface area game, if you want to have a quiz, if you want to do a worksheet. All of these are optional to you if you want extra practice. So that's it for our lesson for today. Go ahead and meet with your partner in your small group. So either you have one partner or you have 2 partners. I will put the groups back up on the board, and then go ahead and get started on your project. That's due a week from